All right, so today we're diving into something that can be kind of tricky.
Yeah,
Copyright.
it can be.
It can feel like a bit of a head scratcher sometimes, especially in today's digital world, whether you're, knee deep in creative projects or
Yeah.
just starting out. We asked you, our listeners, to define copyright in your own words.
I love this.
And it's actually really fascinating to see
Yeah.
how many people said,
Mhm.
like, it's about protecting creative work.
Yeah,
Like that I made this feeling.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the core of it. And yet,
Right.
there's a lot to unpack.
Right.
For example, we saw several of you mention owning websites, logos, even ideas.
Yeah, a lot of people saying that.
But then one listener threw us a real curveball.
Okay.
Can you copyright the color pink?
I love it.
What do you think?
It's such a good question.
Yeah.
Because it highlights like a really common misconception.
It does.
Which is that
Yeah.
you can't copyright a basic building block of creativity like a color.
Right.
Like,
What?
you can't say I own the letter A.
Right. You can't own the air.
Right.
Right.
Everyone needs to use it.
Exactly. You own the expression of the idea, not the idea itself.
Oh, okay.
So think about it like baking a cake.
Okay.
You can't copyright the idea of a chocolate cake,
Right.
but you can copyright your unique recipe
Okay.
and the decoration on top.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Right.
So it's like,
That about
yeah, it's not about owning chocolate and
Yeah.
flour and eggs. It's about owning, like,
your unique expression of those ingredients.
right, this very specific combination.
Precisely. And the way you presented it to the world.
So in the case of our listener who's wondering about pink, it's not about owning pink.
No.
It's about,
It's about how it's used
right,
in a specific original way.
in a specific context.
Exactly.
Right. That makes sense.
A great example of this is how a specific shade of pink might be trademarked as part of a brand's logo.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
So there are other ways to, like,
There are other legal mechanisms
yeah, okay.
that protect those specific expressions.
Got it.
But copyright itself is focused on that tangible, fixed expression.
Okay, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Another theme that came up in the definitions was giving credit.
Oh, yeah.
People were saying, if I give credit, it's fine.
Right.
Like, is that the magic key? Can we
Yeah.
just give a quick shout out and be good?
Credit is important.
Okay.
But it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Okay.
This is where fair use comes into play.
Right. And a few people asked about that.
It did. It's a thorny one.
Yeah.
It's complicated,
Yeah.
but essentially,
Yeah.
it allows for limited use of copyrighted material
Mm-hmm.
without needing to get direct permission.
Okay.
Things like commentary,
Okay.
criticism,
Mhm.
news reporting.
Okay.
So imagine a film critic
Yeah.
using a short clip from a movie
Right.
to illustrate a point in their review
Right. So it's like,
that would generally fall under fair use.
yeah, context matters.
Context is key.
You can't just slap someone else's photo on your website and
Yeah.
say, credit to Google Images.
Right, exactly. Fair use has specific legal tests.
Oh, really?
And even then, it can be open to interpretation.
Oh.
But the core principle is that the use should be transformative,
Going.
not just a replacement for the original work.
Got it.
So it's not about just taking something and using it in the same way.
Right.
It's about adding something new,
Right.
adding your own spin, commenting on it, critiquing it,
So that the use itself is kind of,
has its own originality.
okay, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Now, a few of you mentioned copyright contracts,
Okay.
YouTube strikes.
Right.
Let's unpack that a little bit.
Let's do it.
Do we need a formal agreement every time we create something?
That's a great question. Not necessarily copyright protection actually exists the moment you create something. You don't have to file paperwork or anything like that.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So no need to rush to the copyright office the second I finish a song or write a blog post.
Exactly. However, formally registering your copyright does offer some stronger legal protection
Okay.
if disputes were to arise.
Right.
So it's like that extra layer of security,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Okay.
Now, about those YouTube strikes that you mentioned, this ties into how online platforms are
Right.
creating their own systems for managing copyright.
Right. Several listeners seem a little intimidated by that.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty serious.
Yeah, it can be platforms like YouTube have their own rules and algorithms
Right.
to detect and try to address potential copyright infringement.
Okay.
So they have to be, more proactive
To protect creators' rights.
to protect creators' rights.
That makes sense, but also makes me wonder, like, how do we avoid
Right.
getting caught in that web of algorithms? Like, what's the worst that could happen if we're not careful with this whole copyright thing?
Well, the consequences can range from takedown notices and account suspensions
Oh, wow.
all the way up to legal action and fines.
Really?
Yeah, one of the listeners, Lucas, specifically mentioned contracts and fines
Okay.
in his definition.
Wow.
So he's definitely onto something there.
So this is serious business.
Yeah, it's not something to be taken lightly.
Okay, so back to the idea of owning ideas.
Right.
A few listeners thought you could copyright an idea itself,
Yes.
like website concepts or even specific phrases.
I see what you mean.
So where do we draw the line between inspiration and infringement?
This is where it gets really intriguing. Copyright law focuses on the concrete expression of an idea,
Okay.
not the abstract thought behind it. So, for example, let's say you have a brilliant idea for a website that sells handmade jewelry.
Oh.
You can't copyright that general concept.
Because others might have the same idea independently.
Exactly. You and 100 other people might have that same idea.
Right.
But you can potentially copyright the specific design elements of your website,
Okay.
the layout, the original written content,
Right.
that unique combination of elements that makes it distinctly yours.
So it's not about owning the broad strokes, but rather the unique brushstrokes that create the complete picture.
Exactly. A great analogy.
And even then, copywriting phrases is tricky.
It is. It often falls under trademark law.
Okay.
If it's a tagline specifically associated with a brand or a product.
Right.
Remember we were talking about copywriting the color pink.
Yeah.
It's a similar principle.
Right. You're trying to claim ownership over something that's too broad.
Exactly.
Just wouldn't hold up.
And it shouldn't.
Right.
Because those basic building blocks need to be free for everyone to use and build upon.
Now, amidst all of these legal details, it's easy to forget that copyright has an ethical dimension too.
Absolutely.
One of the listeners, Marissa, really hit on this in her definition. She was talking about originality and giving credit.
Yeah, she's spot on.
Where does that fit into all of this?
Well, while the legal framework is important, copyright also boils down to respecting the effort and the creativity that go into making something original.
Right. It's about acknowledging that someone poured their heart and soul into creating something new.
Exactly. Whether it's a song, painting, a website.
Even that innovative KWL activity that we were looking at earlier.
Precisely. And when we create something ourselves, copyright encourages us to do so with integrity.
Okay.
Knowing that the law is there to protect our own creative endeavors as well.
This has been incredibly insightful.
It's a fascinating topic.
But let's be real. The digital age throws a wrench into everything.
It does.
It feels like the rules are constantly changing. It's like we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole sometimes.
It is a constant balancing act.
Yeah.
Because these new technologies, they're always pushing the boundaries of what copyright protects and how it's enforced.
Right.
Remember Joseph's definition?
Yeah.
He mentioned YouTube's copyright strike system.
Right.
That's a prime example of how online platforms are having to create these mechanisms to navigate this new landscape.
And it's not always smooth sailing.
It isn't.
We've all heard those stories of like creators getting flagged unfairly, or on the flip side, infringing content like totally slipping through the cracks.
It happens all the time. And those systems aren't perfect.
Right.
They're always evolving, just like the technology itself.
So what's a creator to do in this ever-shifting landscape?
Yeah, that's it.
Any advice for our listeners on how to navigate these waters?
I would say, first and foremost, stay informed.
Okay.
Copyright law is constantly being reinterpreted in the digital age.
Right.
So keep up with the latest developments,
Okay.
particularly in your specific creative field.
Mm-hmm.
And when in doubt,
Yeah.
err on the side of caution,
Okay.
ask for permission, cite your sources clearly,
Right.
and explore things like Creative Commons licenses.
Okay.
If you want to share your work more freely,
It's better to be safe than sorry.
absolutely, especially when it comes to other people's work.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to make sure you're respecting their rights.
This has been eye-opening, to say the least.
A fascinating area.
We've gone from those everyday definitions to uncovering some common misconceptions.
Yeah.
Explored the complexities of fair use.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
And even like waded into the wild world of copyright in the digital age.
Trying to make sense of it all.
I feel like we've all learned a lot.
Me too.
Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
Copyright might seem like this dry legal topic.
Yeah.
But at its heart, it's really about something much deeper.
Okay.
It's about the spark of creativity
Okay.
that makes us human.
I love that.
Whether you're an artist, a musician, a writer, or simply someone who appreciates creative work,
Yeah.
understanding copyright empowers all of us to participate in this vibrant and evolving culture of expression.
Beautifully put. And to our listeners, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
What surprised you most about copyright?
Yeah.
Did any of the definitions spark a new thought?
Let us know.
Head over to our website and tell us about it.
We might feature it on a future episode.
Your question might just inspire our next deep dive.
Exactly.
Until then, keep those creative sparks flying.
Yes.
Legally, of course.
Of course, legally and ethically.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.